Hey, welcome back to Album April. It's April 17th, and today I listened to Cosmo's Factory by Creedence Clearwater Revival. I swear, every single time I forget if it's Creedence Clearwater Revival or Clearwater Creedence Revival. I'm pretty sure that I just look it up and I see that it's Creedence first, but I just forget that instantly because in my head, Clearwater Creedence Revival sounds so much better. And now that I'm saying both out loud, Creedence Clearwater Revival is a lot harder to say because it kind of just turns into a tongue twister at the end. Anyway, CCR, as they're often called, was a pretty big deal in the late 60s and early 70s. They had several successful albums and 5 different singles get to number 2. None of them at number 1, but 5 went to number 2, and that includes 2 from this album. But if you ask me, I'd say that the most notable song by CCR is Proud Mary, which is the song that was later covered so much better than the original by Ike and Tina Turner. CCR's style is a very bluesy, folksy kind of rock. They had big success for a few years until they broke up because I would say that they all hated each other, but it's more accurate to say that the other 3 all hated the lead, John Fogerty, and John Fogerty hated all the others. But anyway, this album, Cosmo's Factory, I picked this one because I just Googled what their best one is, and this is what I found. So if you disagree, I'm sorry, Google has spoken. Anyway, this album was kind of mid. There wasn't really anything bad about it, but there also wasn't really anything particularly good either. Looking through the album track listing right now, I can only see one song that I would describe as particularly good, and that's the closing track, Long as I See the Light. Everything else just kind of ranges from meh to okay. My least favorite track on the album was Heard It Through the Grapevine. That is a song that was not written by John Fogerty of CCR. It was originally made for Gladys Knight and the Pips and would later go on to be very famously covered by Marvin Gaye. My first issue comes from John Fogerty's vocals, which I wasn't a fan of on this track. He kept going into a falsetto that I didn't think sounded very good. It went from like raspy and edgy to a falsetto. But my real problem comes from the fact that this version of Heard It From the Grapevine is 11 minutes in length. Maybe 5 of those minutes are composed of actual song, and the rest of it is just spinning its wheels, solos, jamming, and I just got so bored. There was also another song, this one was also a cover on this album, called Ooby Dooby, which to me just sounded like a bad version of Tutti Frutti, except this one apparently came out earlier. Not that much earlier, just earlier in that same year, but still, the original version was before Tutti Frutti. There was also another song called Looking Out the Back Door, which I thought this too, so I'm not going to blame people for thinking this. People thought it was about getting home from work, then going on your back porch and getting high on something. According to John Fogerty, it was actually inspired by his 3-year-old son at the time. It's kind of like a song version of that game Drunk or a Kid, because honestly, it could go both ways. I'm not saying that I thought this album was bad, I just thought it wasn't very interesting. In general, I really like the places where you can go when you combine country and rock and roll together. But I've said this before in past Album April videos, easy listening as a big blanket subgenre is one that I don't necessarily have anything against, but I find myself passionately liking almost nothing from. And while it's probably inaccurate to refer to CCR as easy listening, it does kind of fall into that very mellow niche. In fact, they're one of the most notable examples of a subgenre called swamp rock, which to me really feels like a different coat of paint on the idea of yacht rock. I realize that I might be stepping on a lot of people's toes with this because CCR is a pretty well-liked band. I'm not saying they're a bad band, I'm just saying that they're not necessarily for me. The album I didn't think was bad, it just wasn't my favorite. Alright, thank you for listening, I'll see you tomorrow.